Thank you. My name is Jim Pesner. I'm from Magomata and also chair audit committee in the Northern Cape. My question, Jude, is the reporting framework in South Africa. If you compare the private sector and the public sector, the private sector seems to be getting it right, and the public sector seems to be lagging in terms of reporting. With all this legislation that we have formulated for public sector compliance, what is your role and how you ensure that when it comes to reporting in South Africa, especially public sector, we achieve fair presentation and we try to reduce what we read on the newspapers, on the reporting of the public sector financial, mainly financial statement, and also the concern, which is very topical today, regarding the administration, especially management of state assets. For example, there was a concern that irregular expenditure, fruitless expenditure, wasteful expenditure is increasing. With all the legislation that we have formulated, how, as a national treasure, make sure that the public sector basically try to reduce and make sure that the assets, the public sector assets are effectively managed by the custodians. Thank you.
Okay. No, it helps if there are fewer.
Okay, thank you very much. One question. Thanks.
No, that's fine. Thanks. Look, the first thing to acknowledge, and most people would never understand this, especially people who have cut their professional teeth only in the private sector. The public sector is a complex world. Not only is it big, but it is very complex. Now, it gets worse in our context because we have brought about several changes all at the same time. So what you get is what some people would call reform or transformation fatigue. We introduced a constitution that creates 3 spheres of government, and you mustn't worry that I'm going to answer like a politician and say all the things that have got nothing to do with your question, and leave your question unanswered. But the context is very important. We created 3 spheres. We went on a few years after creating them to then consolidate the municipalities because we figured out that some of them wouldn't be viable. They wouldn't be able to attract the kinds of skills that are required to make sure that they can comply with the legislative frameworks, be they for financial management, auditing, and supply chain and what have you. And then what we do is to overlay several objectives. We want to deliver social services, infrastructure very quickly to redress the bad legacy that we inherited. But at the same time, when you deliver these services, you want to make sure that you create millionaires or billionaires. You want to do BEE. And the moment you do all of these things at the same time, there has to be confusion. But of course, one of the things that I think is very good, which we have imposed on ourselves, are these very high standards, which on paper, very few people can fault here and there the margins. Nothing is perfect in life if it's designed by men or human beings, just before I get lynched by the female colleagues here. Anything that's designed by human beings will always have to be improved one way or the other. But I'm saying that we have set ourselves high standards if you look at the legal frameworks that we have. What we then need is the patience to follow through. Make sure that you allow yourselves time progressively to be able to meet the high standards that you have set. Now, I am choosing to answer your question this way because a lot of the time, I have come across people who say, what we are asking ourselves, what we are asking of our people, given the shortage of skills that we have, is too tough for them to comply with. And therefore, just bring the bar down a little bit. You know, you don't want to have good audits because they amount to undertaking a fraction of the audit that ordinarily you are supposed to do of an institution. No. When you see that people aren't able to meet the standards that you have set, you need to make sure that you give them time. But if you just sit back and wait for the clock to tick and hope that a miracle will happen, even in those places where they used to happen, as they are captured in the Bible, I think they are no longer happening now. In fact, you see the opposite these days. So what you've got to try and do is to then take proactive steps to educate the people, to make sure that you make available professionals right across the length and breadth of the country, trained in these fields. Now, for our part, as the Treasury, we have done a number of things, but two of them stand out. And I'm very proud to be associated with an institution that has achieved these things, even if I've only had something to do with one of them, partially so. And the other one has happened under my predecessor, but I've continued to encourage it to happen. We run a program that we call TOPS, which trains chartered accountants in the public service, something that I suspect no one had ever dreamt of. And I think that when the Accountant General, whom I understand may have been here in the morning, if he honored or he asked Zanele to represent us ably so. Now, you would know that I suspect that when he first suggested this, people thought he had smoked his socks. But we have produced, Zanele might remember the pass rate there, but we have had a very good performance. Now, that's the only way you address the skills shortage. You send, then you make the people, you create as many as possible, even if some of them go to New Zealand, but there will be few remaining or sufficient number remaining here to be deployed even to the places that you would never have thought that a chartered accountant would want to work, given how well paid that profession is and stuff like that. So I'm saying that that's what we've done. Secondly, we've run one of the biggest internship programs, I think, in the country, where we give municipalities money and we say to them, hire a person, young, recently qualified person in finance, accounting, and those fields where the skills are scarce. Hire the person preferably from your locality. Because if you hire someone from Joburg, once they get the training, they get smart and they return to Soweto, you see. So get someone from your locality. Of course, some of them will migrate. But what you mustn't do is to get tired of it. Say, this thing is not working, give up. Train as much as possible. After some time, the market will respond. And they will end up in the places where you need them. Now, we do these things, and a system of government requires that all of its parts must work. You can see now, if you had asked more questions, we would have taken the whole day. But in the accountability chain in government, and I mean, is the media here? Okay. That I should watch what I say. But in the accountability, no, I'm going to say it still, but maybe differently. In the accountability system of government, right? You have the legislative arm. It must supervise the executive. You have the executive. You have us, the accounting officers. We have got people under us, like Zanele and others, throughout. For the system to work, and then, of course, we're ably assisted by our internal audit units, on the one hand, and the audit committees. First, each one of these parts ought to, at least in an ideal world, to have the people with the right orientation all the time. Right? People who understand what their role in that system is. Not people who are going to ask me. And I've come across several of them. Who say, what are you doing about that place which is not building a school in that corner? I mean, I'm heading a department with 1,200 people. I can't have all of them in each one of the corners of this country. There are people in that part who are paid to make sure that the things that bother you, my brother, are fixed. But if no one gets them to feel the heat when they have not done what is required of them in law, what they are paid to do, then the system will not hold. Then the system will not hold. You will hear cries of people who say, no, these standards are too high, revise them. I mean, in my case, I take a lot of pride in having my country being number one, even if it's one out of several dimensions of this WEF scale. And what I aspire for is that we should be number one amongst many, if not on all of those. So if you drop the standard, you cannot aspire to be number one. But anyway, I hope I've answered your question. On that note, I love you lots. And bye-bye.